My daughter moved home, wanted a $79 Wi-Fi extender. We refused. She wouldn't buy it either, on principle. In the end, our bond mattered more than the Wi-Fi. When our daughter moved home in July, the house remembered how to breathe with 3 again. I don't know how else to put it. The place had been quiet since we became 2, my wife and I, padding across the hardwood in our retirement rhythm. Making coffee for 2 mugs. Loading only the top silverware basket because the bottom never seemed to fill, but the day she rolled her suitcases back up our front walk, the air changed. Doors opened and closed more often. Music drifted down. The hall at unapproved volumes. She was collected by the back door in a little heap. Exactly the kind of pile I used to trip over when she was 13 and immortal. She arrived with the polite chaos of a person who has grown a full life elsewhere and must now compress it into her old bedroom without shrinking any of it. Boxes labeled work and kitchen and don't touch slid across her entryway like new furniture auditioning for a part. She hugged us, cried once, cleanly, the way adults do when they're determined to. Be composed, wiped her face and said, "This is temporary. 6 months? Maybe a year. I'll get back on my feet and out of your hair." "We like your hair," my wife said, pulling her into a second hug. I said nothing witty, just held her a little longer. The breakup had been sudden and, from what I could tell, mostly unkind. She didn't give us every detail. One of the small violences of watching your children become adults is that you rarely get the whole story anymore, but the outline was enough. A lease ending, a relationship ending, a new boss who could not care less about either. July did what July does. It made everything sticky and more expensive and somehow more urgent. And we did what parents do. We opened the door and made room. We're retired now. That is a weird sentence, even after 2 years of saying it. We spent 3 decades setting alarms and meeting deadlines. And then one day HR gave us a cake, and the next day no one expected us anywhere. We're not wealthy in the television sense, but we have the good fortune of not needing to decide between groceries and medication. And we have a house that's bigger than 2 people really require, a long rectangle of a thing with an add-on. Den, a stubborn dining room, and a gracious ability to hold holidays. The floors still remember birthday parties. The walls still hold little dents from when a laundry basket misjudged a corner. The basement is finished to phrase realtors love 3. Segmented rooms that we've never figured out the perfect purpose for. One is furnished but somehow always slightly wrong, the couch too low, the lamp too bossy. The other 2 are practical and air-conditioned and have all the charm of an airport jetway. No windows, no sunlight, full bars of self-service that know. One wants dot, and then there is our internet dot app, and tea feeds us from the street like a patient aunt with a ladle. It is technically fine. If you're my wife or me, sitting at either end of the couch, watching a show or checking the weather, it is indistinguishably perfect. But if you venture to the extremities of our rectangle, the front guest room where our daughter has set up base camp, or the far back den where houseplants go to test their religion, the signal gets moody. Sometimes it is glorious, sometimes it is a rumor. We have lived with this like you live with an old refrigerator that hums at night. You roll your eyes. You adapt. You tell yourself that modern life is too demanding anyway. For 2 empty nesters, it has always been fine. Our daughter, however, works from home. Not theoretically from home, as in I answer emails on the couch while my office thinks. I'm on a train, but practically and contractually. Her job actually matters at 10 in the morning on a Tuesday, and the people who rely on her expect her face in a little square on their screen and her files to appear in a shared folder with the speed of light and her microphone not to crackle. Like a campfire. When she moved back in, she brought a laptop that was somehow thinner than a legal pad, a headset with a little boom microphone that made her look like mission control, and a calendar that apparently never sleeps. The first week, we all tried not to notice the friction. She sat up on her childhood desk, updated hilariously. With an ergonomic chair she assembled in under 12 minutes while explaining the concept of lumbar support. To me, like I had never possessed a spine. She logged in. She waved at us from her square in a grid of other squares. And then the house did what it always does at the far end. It pouted. Can anyone hear me?" she said, staring at a dot somewhere at the top of her laptop. "It says my connection is unstable." "Sit still," my wife stage whispered from the hall. As if the internet were a skittish cat you could coax with gentleness. Our daughter moved to the dining table. Bars improved. Then, mid-presentation, the signal sighed and let go. She moved to the kitchen island. It worked until the microwave stole the electrons. She moved to the furnished basement room. The signal was a dream, but the couch set her lower than any human spine approves of. And she came upstairs after 2 hours looking like she'd been folded in half by a magician. The other 2 basement rooms? I suggested, knowing full well. The answer, no windows, she said, as if windows were a promised constitutional right. I can't spend 8 hours in a box. You can come up for air, I said. I can also not live underground, she said, not unkindly, just in the way of a person who has long since learned exactly what kind of spaces make them feel alive till we love her. Let me say that plainly. She is 20-something going on 30, competent to a degree that makes me proud and slightly nervous, frugal in the way that only adults who have watched Interest Compound will ever be, and more self-reliant than I remember being at that age. She does not expect us to mother her. She hates that word now. She doesn't treat the house like a hotel, though we have to remind her, out of old habit to put dishes in the dishwasher instead of inventing a new category called sink art. She told us on day 2, I'll buy my own almond milk, as if that declaration were a moral stance. She has savings, real savings, not a jar of quarters and a plan. She also has a job that will chase her with notifications if she tries. To hide, we set a routine quickly because routines are how families stop stepping on one another's toes. In our house, dinner is a sacrament in the small, practical way, not candles and violins. Just hot food and the announcement that for 45 minutes, we will look at one another with our whole faces. We cook or buy 6 nights a week. She takes one night and makes a dish that usually includes chickpeas and an ingredient I must Google. She has dietary restrictions that we don't make a big deal out of, because making a big deal out of a person's stomach always ends with them eating alone, and I refuse to preside over that nonsense in my own house. We don't charge her rent, not because we're saints, because we remember exactly how hard the first year after a breakup is, especially when the breakup drags your whole life across town. The deal, unspoken but understood, was move in, stabilize, save, move out when your feet feel yours again. And in the middle of this kindness, our router decided to become a moral question. Dad, she said on a Tuesday after the second week, sliding a wink across the table to my phone the way a lawyer submits evidence. This is the extender I used at my apartment. It would cover my room and probably the den too. Can we get one? Can we? I said, deliberately non-committal. The extender in question was not a mortgage payment. It was not a yacht. It was one of those little saucer-looking things that plugs into a wall and scatters your Wi-Fi signal like confetti. It cost less than what airlines now charge to check a bag that would have been considered her-sized in 1991. Our internet works for us, I added, hearing myself sound exactly like every father in every sitcom who insists the old car still has one good road trip left in it. She nodded, that patient, tight-lipped nod of a person bracing for a debate. It works for you because you watch Netflix in the living room. I'm trying to present to a whole team and upload gigabytes and not drop a call every 5 minutes. You can work in the finished basement, I said. We have plenty of room down there. Great signal. She made the face she makes when something is technically true and practically intolerable. It's freezing and the couch is wrong. What does wrong mean? My wife asked. It means my neck will file a complaint with HR by lunch, she said, smiling because we were smiling and the joke isn't always in the words, but in agreeing to laugh at the same time. I want to work in my room in the mornings. It's bright. I focus better. I get more done. I'll still come down for calls or whatever, but the extender would solve it. I did what fathers do when confronted with a request that is both reasonable and offensive to some ancient part of the brain that will never die. I laughed, not cruelly. Not in a way meant to belittle. Just that startled sound that comes out when someone suggests adjusting the thermostat in a house owned by a man over 50. My wife laughed too. The idea of us buying a gadget because the far end of the house had decided it was digital Siberia. It tickled some silly nerve. She did not laugh. On principle, I said, mostly to myself, it's our house. It works. For us, you're a grown woman with a good job. I said that last part the way you say a credit score out loud to make it feel more real. I know, she said, and to her credit, she was not snide. I'm also living here temporarily, so I don't burn money on an apartment I don't want yet. It seems silly to invest in tech for a place I'm leaving as soon as I'm ready to. Go again. If the house needs an extender, it should be the house that buys it. The house, my wife said, is 2 retired empty nesters who watch the Great British Bake Off and can't tell a ping from a pong. We're funded adequately. For scones and vacation photo prints. She meant it kindly. We were both smiling. We don't need an extender. My daughter stared at us exasperated and amused, like she was watching toddlers refuse a nap I knew they needed. I mean, you're also paying for a family vacation next month, she said. Flights, hotel, rental car, park tickets, meals you. Can afford it? Oh, we can afford it. That isn't the point, and is also always the point. The stupidest fights in families usually have a checkbook sitting nearby doing nothing. When we decided to take that vacation, a big one, the kind my wife and I never could have afforded when the kids were little, it felt like a victory lap for the kind of parenting we were still doing long after the school pickup line ended. We don't throw money around for sport. We do not believe in gilded toothbrushes. But we believe in getting our people together and paying for something so big it is bigger than any argument. The vacation is a cathedral built out of plane tickets. And good intentions dot an extender, though. A gadget you can buy on a Tuesday and forget you own by Friday. My heart resisted that in the way hearts resist anything that feels like paying the ransom for a problem they don't accept exists. Work in the den, I said, aware that my voice had slid into that dead register, the one that has timbre and authority and the faint smell of a newspaper. Or the dining room, or the kitchen, or the finished basement for calls and your room for typing. We will bring you tea. We will literally run an extension cord and a space heater and a plan if it will help. We will absolutely not buy something for a problem we do not have. On principle, my wife added, because marriage is sometimes a duet that my daughter sat back. She is not a teenager. She did not roll her eyes. She did not stomp. She inhaled and let it out. On principle, she said, but the phrase did not mean what it meant in our mouths. That's exactly why I won't buy it. On principle. It's your house. If your house can't carry internet to a bedroom, that's your infrastructure it could fix, not mine. There it was, the hinge. You could feel the door swing between generations without squeaking. She wasn't wrong, neither were we. It was immoral. Question stapled to a router. We all went quiet for a beat. The sound the house makes in those moments, something between air conditioning breath and the sighs. The old Windows release is a soundtrack I have known for 3 decades. It cues the next line. Dinner? My wife said, because dinner is how we remind ourselves that not every disagreement is a wildfire. We ate sitting slightly closer than usual. We asked more questions about work and the breakup than we normally do. We listened. We tilted our heads the way you do when someone you love is solving a puzzle with their life, and you cannot add any more pieces without ruining the picture. We did not bring up the extender again. After she went to her room, I washed dishes and my wife dried. I said, we can afford a thing that costs less than 1 airport sandwich. She said, I know. I said, I hate that she expects us to pay for it. She said, I know. We stood there in a kitchen where we have solved problems that would scare new parents and new grandparents alike. And we stumbled over this one like it had been invented just to make us look silly in front of ourselves. In bed that night, I looked up mesh networks on my phone and fell asleep reading a blog written by a man who uses the word backhaul like it's a love language. In the morning, I poured coffee and watched our daughter carry her laptop down the hall. She waved the mug I'd set by the machine, said, thanks, and disappeared into her bright, moody room where the signal sometimes behaves and sometimes SOL cussed out. We love our daughter. We have a good relationship. We are retired, comfortable, not careless. She is frugal, independent, more responsible than I was at 28. We are paying for a family vacation next month. That makes me giddy just thinking about it. And somehow, in the middle of all this abundance, we have stumbled into a standoff about a plastic saucer you can buy at any big box store. On principle, we said. On principle, she said back. The house, I swear, smiled. I didn't know then that a $79 extender would become a referendum on adulthood, gratitude, and the physics of generosity. At the time, it was just Tuesday, and the Wi-Fi was sulking. The argument had not yet put on shoes. That part comes next. The second week of her stay, the Wi-Fi became less like a utility and more like a relative everyone had an opinion about. We spoke about it at breakfast, muttered about it while unloading the dishwasher, cursed it under our breath when a Zoom call collapsed in a pixelated freeze frame. Our daughter would appear in the kitchen doorway holding her laptop like a wounded pet. See? Look, she'd say, turning the screen toward us as if we could personally heal the signal by squinting. It literally says unstable connection. I can't do my job if my face keeps freezing in mid-sentence. My wife would pat her arm. It works fine for us. That's because you two aren't presenting to 30 people across the country, she'd reply. You're streaming Bake Off, which, by the way, buffers less than my meetings. Explain that to me. I had no explanation. The cruel truth was that she wasn't wrong. Our house is long, brick, stubborn. It has quirks that don't show up on blueprints. Some rooms hold heat like an oven, others stay cool, even in July. The plumbing makes noises like it's clearing its throat. And the Wi-Fi, poor thing, radiates bravely from the middle but loses courage as it wanders toward the edges. Her bedroom is an edge. One morning, she dropped a folded printout on the table beside my coffee. This is the extender I told you about. It's plug and play. It would fix everything. I looked at the picture. The device resembled a cross between a nightlight and a smoke detector. The price circled in pen was less than what we spend on dinner when we go out once a week. My instinct. Laughter. The way you laugh when someone asks you to pay a toll to cross your own driveway. My wife laughed too. The two of us were tired and smug, chuckling at the absurdity of treating internet like oxygen. She did not laugh. You're serious? She asked. We are, I said, trying to keep the edge out of my voice. Your mother and I don't need this. The house runs fine as is. You're the one with the problem. She folded her arms. I'm the one working 12 hours a day. On video calls. I'm the one who needs this. Which is why it should be a house expense. House expense? I repeated. Honey, we don't charge you rent. We don't bill you for groceries or utilities. We're already covering you being here. She lifted her chin. And I appreciate that. But this is infrastructure. If your plumbing broke, you wouldn't tell me to fix it because I was the one who flushed the toilet. The argument startled me with its sharpness. Not cruel, not disrespectful, just sharpened by principle. She was 28, employed financially, stable, proud of not mooching. But here, she drew a line. You can work in the basement, I said, clinging to logic. Signal's perfect down there. Dad, I can't spend all day in a windowless box. It's not a box, I muttered. It's finished. It's finished like a dentist's waiting room is finished. She shot back. I want to. Work in my room. Natural light, actual furniture. I just need the signal to reach me. The room went quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator. I saw my wife's lips press into a line. We'd stumbled into something bigger than bandwidth. This wasn't about a gadget anymore. It was about adulthood, pride, who pays for what, and the invisible boundaries between parents and their grown child. Finally, my wife said, we can afford it. That's not the point. The point is you expecting us to fix something that isn't broken for us. My daughter exhaled hard. And the point is me refusing to throw money into a house I don't own. I'll buy whatever I need when I get my own place again. Until then, it should be your responsibility. And there it was, principle squared, her principle against ours. Both logical, both stubborn. That night after she went upstairs, I washed the dishes while my wife dried. The question hovered between us like steam. It costs less than a tank of gas. She whispered. I know, I said. She could buy it herself. I know. Why does this feel bigger than it is? Because it was bigger. It was about more than Wi-Fi. It was about the subtle shift of roles when your child is an adult who still needs you but doesn't want to need you too much. It was about us wanting to help but also wanting her to recognize help when it was given. It was about pride disguised as principle. Upstairs, a video call cut in and out. Her voice rose in muffled frustration. The Wi-Fi, poor fragile thing, kept sulking at the edges of the house, unaware it had become the third combatant in a family standoff, and I realized this was only the beginning. By the third week, the Wi-Fi standoff had developed into something you could almost chart on a calendar. Mornings started with our daughter trying her luck in her room. By 10 a.m., she'd migrated to the dining table. By noon, she was sighing. In the kitchen. By 2 p.m., she was stomping down the basement stairs with her laptop under her arm, muttering about living in a submarine. Every evening ended with a new round of the same argument. The extender, the principal, the refusal. It wasn't really about money. If it had been, we would have bought the thing by Tuesday. It was about what ought to happen. To her, it was absurd. To invest her own cash into a house she didn't own and wouldn't stay in. To us, it was absurd for a grown woman with savings and a well-paying job to expect retired parents to upgrade infrastructure they didn't need. The word principle had become a curse in our house. On principle, I won't pay for it. She said one night over dinner, pushing chickpeas around her plate. On principle, we won't either, I replied. You're laughing, but it's actually not funny. She shot back. My boss literally called me out for dropping during a meeting today. You could work in the basement, I reminded her, for what felt like the 100th time. She threw up her hands. Dad, the basement is, what's the word, soul-crushing? One room has a couch designed by someone who hated backs. The other. 2 are windowless boxes. I'm not spending 8 hours in solitary confinement. My wife tried a gentler approach. Sweetheart, maybe just treat it as an investment in yourself. Like buying a better chair or noise-canceling headphones. That's different. I'll take the chair with me when I leave. I'll take the headphones. I'm not taking an extender. That's wired into this house. That's your responsibility. We were stuck in a loop. Every angle circled back to Principal Dot. Meanwhile, the house began to feel the strain. Dinner, once lighthearted, grew tense. We found ourselves avoiding the topic, but it slipped back in through side doors. My wife would casually mention how nice it was to watch shows in the den without issues. Our daughter would mutter something about lucky you. I'd pretend to read the newspaper, though my ears strained for the next round. One afternoon, I came home from a walk to find her sitting, cross-legged on the floor of the hallway outside her bedroom door, laptop perched on her knees. What are you doing out here? I asked. She looked up, hair falling out of a messy bun, cheeks pink with frustration. This exact spot gets 3 bars. My room gets 1. You look ridiculous, I said before I could stop myself. Tell that to the router, she snapped. I bit my tongue. There was no winning. Even the Wi-Fi itself seemed to take sides. Sometimes it worked fine in her room, lulling her into false hope. Other days it sputtered and died in the middle of a sentence, leaving her glaring at the ceiling like the house had personally betrayed her. And still, the extender remained UMBOUGHT. We had the means. She had the means. But neither side would budge, because to give in would mean surrendering the principle. She saw herself as standing up for adulthood, refusing to sink money into her parents' infrastructure. We saw ourselves as standing up for boundaries, refusing to bankroll every minor inconvenience of a grown child. The irony wasn't lost on me. We were, all 3 of us, being stubborn in the same way Dot at night, after she retreated to her room. My wife and I would lie in bed and replay the day. She's right, you know, my wife would whisper. It is our house, our router. And she's right too, I'd reply. She has the money, she's 30. She could solve this tomorrow if she wanted. So everyone's right, she sighed, which means everyone's wrong, I said. Both laughed, but not very hard. The house, once peaceful, had become a courtroom. The plaintiff and defendant lived under the same roof, and the jury, my wife and I, couldn't agree on a verdict. And in the middle of it all, the Wi-Fi blinked. On and off, a little green light mocking us with every flicker. By week 4, the Wi-Fi issue had gone from mild inconvenience to a full-blown Cold War. Nobody was yelling. Nobody slammed doors. But the tension sat in the house like static, buzzing faintly, waiting for the smallest spark. Our daughter stopped asking directly. Instead, she began narrating her suffering. Dropped again, she'd mutter from the dining room. 3rd time today. Or, wish I could work in my own room like a normal adult. Or the dagger. Hard to believe in 2023 we can get a video call from space, but not from the east end of this house. Each comment was a pebble tossed into the pond. Ripples spread. My wife rolled her eyes. I clenched my jaw. The Wi-Fi light blinked. Impassive Dot, we responded in kind. Basement works fine, I'd say, too cheerfully. Or you could always buy that extender. My wife would add, knowing full well the answer. Our daughter would shoot. As that exasperated millennial look, the one that somehow mixes I love you with you two are impossible. Then she'd retreat upstairs, laptop hugged tight like a shield Dot at dinner. The truce cracked again. You know, she said one night, spearing a roasted potato, my friend pays rent at her parents' house. She covers utilities too, but when she asked for a desk chair, they bought it. Because it's their house, infrastructure. My wife raised an eyebrow. Do we need to start charging rent to qualify for the chair subsidy? That's not what I'm saying. It's what it sounds like. I just mean, sweetheart, I interrupted. We've hosted you free of charge for a month. We feed you 6 nights a week. We're covering groceries, vacations, even the almond milk. And you're upset about a $79 extender? She put her fork down carefully, like the table was wired to explode. On principle, yes. Because it's not mine to buy. I'm not upgrading your house for you. There it was again, principle. The word had grown teeth. We tried to laugh it off. Well then, on principle, we're not buying it either, I said. Fine, she replied, pushing back her chair. Then we're stuck. And that was the truth. We were stuck out in quieter moments. My wife and I admitted it. We could afford 10 extenders. We just didn't like being asked. It felt presumptuous, almost entitled, like she was still 13. Expecting us to foot the bill for a new pair of shoes. But she wasn't 13. She was 28, independent, disciplined, ahead of her peers financially. She wasn't mooching. She was principled. And so were we. The standoff turned. Surreal. She complained to her friends, who told her we were being ridiculous. We mentioned it to our friends, who told us she was being ridiculous. Everyone laughed at the story, but nobody could agree on the punchline. Meanwhile, the vacation loomed. A family trip we'd been planning for months, flights, hotel, rental car, park tickets, meals, all covered by us. Thousands of dollars. A gesture of love, of togetherness. And here we were, squabbling over a device that cost less than one check bag fee. One night, after she went upstairs, my wife and I sat in the living room in silence. Do you ever feel like we're cutting off our nose to spite our face? My wife asked finally. Every day, I admitted. But I can't bring myself to buy it. It feels wrong. Same, she sighed. Like if we cave, we're telling her she can treat us like an ATM forever. She's not like that, I said. You know she's not. I know, but still. We sat there, the glow of the TV bouncing off our tired faces, both aware that this wasn't about Wi-Fi anymore. It was about adulthood, respect, boundaries, and the messy transition of welcoming a grown child back into a nest that had already learned how to be emptied out. The house itself seemed to laugh at us. Its walls were thick enough to muffle arguments, but thin enough to carry every sigh. The router blinked from its shelf, a tiny green metronome keeping time to a silent whir. And upstairs, our daughter worked in the hallway again, crouched cross-legged, where the signal was strongest, determined not to surrender. By the time September rolled in, the Wi-Fi argument had metastasized into a kind of running gag with sharp edges. Nobody shouted, nobody cursed, but the house itself seemed to know there was a standoff in progress. Every conversation was colored by it. Even when we weren't talking about the extender, we were talking about the extender, and yet life went on. Dinners were cooked, laundry rotated through machines, the dog barked at the mail carrier. Our daughter still worked remote hours, hopping from her bedroom to the dining room to the basement and back again, laptop in tow like a child clinging to a blanket. My wife still clipped coupons she didn't need, a holdover habit from when every penny mattered. I still walked the neighborhood most mornings, saying hello to other retirees who had graduated to the part of life where the weather is your main talking point. From the outside, we looked like a picture of domestic harmony dot inside. We were locked in a polite battle over $79 dot, and in the background, the vacation loomed dot. It wasn't a small trip. We had booked flights, hotels, a rental car, park passes, dinners, and shows. Thousands of dollars. A full-blown family getaway that would give us 1 week of pure togetherness. The kind you only get a few times in life when everyone is old enough to appreciate it, but still willing to clear their schedules. My wife and I were paying for the whole thing gladly. It was our gift, our way of saying, we may be retired, but we're not done making memories with you. Every time I looked at the binder with our itinerary, I felt proud. And then I'd remember we were still arguing about an extender that cost less than one check bag fee. The absurdity gnawed at me. One evening, while setting the table, my daughter casually said, you know, the Wi-Fi dropped 5 times today. My manager asked if I was traveling. I said no, just working from my parents' house. He laughed. Did you laugh? I asked. No, because it's not funny. My wife gave me a look across the table that said, don't start. But the words bubbled up anyway. You realize, I said, keeping my tone measured, that we're about to spend thousands of dollars on a family vacation, and you're upset that we won't buy a $79 extender? She set down her fork. It's not about the money, Dad. It's about responsibility. If you own the house, you own its problems. I'm not going to sink money into upgrading something that isn't mine, on principle. There it was again, that cursed word, principle. And on principle, I shot back, we're not buying something we don't need. The Wi-Fi works for us. You're the one with the problem. The table went quiet. My wife stabbed at her salad with unnecessary force. Have savings, my daughter said finally. I'm not asking because I can't afford it. I'm asking because I shouldn't have to. This is about fairness. I almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because of how surreal it felt. Here we were, 3 adults who loved each other, who enjoyed each other's company, who had lived through far harder problems together, and we were circling this tiny issue like it was a mountain dot after dinner. I washed dishes while my wife dried. We didn't say much at first. Then she sighed. You know what bothers me? She said. The way she says infrastructure, like we're running a municipal government. I chuckled. She's not wrong. The Wi-Fi is part of the house. It's also part of her work, my wife countered. She benefits most. Why should we pay for something we don't use? Because we're parents, I muttered. Because that's what we've always done. Because when she was 13, we didn't. Ask her to chip in for groceries. She's not 13, my wife said sharply. Then softer, she's 28, she has a good job. She's more responsible than we were at her age. We stood there in silence, rinsing plates, both of us caught in the tug-of-war between. Memory and principle. Later that night, as I scrolled through my phone in bed, I stumbled on a blog post about mesh networks. The author, clearly a tech enthusiast, wrote about whole home coverage and dead zones eliminated. With such passion, you'd think he was describing a religious awakening. I imagined buying a whole system, setting it up in secret, and presenting it to her like a peace offering. Then I imagined her saying, "See, you admitted it was your responsibility," and my stomach tightened. No, I wasn't ready to surrender. The next morning, I overheard her on a call in the dining room. "Sorry guys, my Wi-Fi dropped again." "No, I'm not traveling, just living at my parents' place." "Yeah, they don't really believe in extenders." I felt my face flush. Not with shame, exactly, but with the uncomfortable awareness that our family standoff had become office gossip. Somewhere out there, a team of professionals now thought of me as the Luddite father who refused to buy a gadget out of spite. That evening, we tried again to talk it through. "Sweetheart," my wife began carefully, "we want you to feel comfortable. Here, we want you to succeed. But you have to understand, we don't need this thing. You do." "And I want to buy it," our daughter replied. "But I won't, because it's not my house. It's your infrastructure." I refuse to throw money into something I can't take with me. We stared at each other across the table, three people equally stubborn, equally convinced of their righteousness. In that moment, I realized something. This wasn't really about Wi-Fi anymore. It was about adulthood and independence, and the blurry line between parent and child when the child is grown, but the parent still sees the echoes of the teenager who once needed everything bought for her. It was about the transition from caretaker to landlord, from authority to roommate. It was about respect, and respect, like Wi-Fi, is hard to measure until it goes missing. I poured myself a glass of wine. My wife rubbed her temples. Our daughter excused herself, retreating to her room where the signal flickered bravely for a few minutes before collapsing. The router blinked on the shelf, innocent and oblivious. The house hummed around it. And I thought to myself, we're going on a vacation. Next month, that costs more than her entire emergency fund. And yet, we may never recover from this $79 war. The vacation came and went like a postcard you pin to the fridge. For 1 week, we were not bickering about dead zones and extenders. We were just family, parents and daughter, laughing through heat and crowds, riding rides, eating meals we didn't cook, smiling for pictures that would sit in frames long after the arguments faded. The Wi-Fi at the resort worked perfectly, of course. My daughter logged in one morning from the balcony, palm trees in the background, and said, "See, this is how it should be." My wife and I traded a glance over our coffee and decided, silently, not to answer. On that trip, we rediscovered each other. She was lighter, freer, the breakup that had sent her back to us receding like a storm in the rearview mirror. We saw the parts of her that made us proud, capable, funny, resourceful, tender. She saw us not as obstacles, but as companions. The vacation was proof that beneath the standoff, love was still the anchor, but vacations end. And when we came home, the house welcomed us with the same old routines. The laundry baskets filled, the fridge emptied, and the Wi-Fi. Sulked out the first Monday back, I heard it again. The sound of her voice rising in frustration from behind her bedroom door. "Can anyone hear me? Oh, sorry, my connection dropped." Then the familiar shuffle of footsteps down the hall as she migrated to the dining table. It was déjà vu. The problem had been patient while we were away. Now it wanted attention. Again, I thought the vacation might have softened us all, but it didn't. She didn't ask for the extender outright anymore. She didn't need to. Her sighs carried the request. Our silence carried the refusal. The word principle hovered unspoken, like a ghost everyone pretends not to see. And yet something inside me had changed. Watching her on that trip, laughing until tears came, I remembered why we had opened our door in July. Not out of obligation, not out of pity, but because she is ours. Because when your child shows up with heartbreak in boxes, you don't tally columns. You clear space, you make a bed. You say, stay as long as you need. That's what love does, even when it's inconvenient, even when it makes you laugh and grind your teeth at the same time. So one night after dinner, when the house had gone quiet, I pulled out my phone and looked up the extender again. The price hadn't changed. $79, free shipping, 1-day delivery. I stared at it for a long time. $79. Less than a round of golf. Less than a tank of gas. Less than what she saves every single month by living here rent-free. Less than what we just spent on appetizers during vacation. Why did it feel so enormous? Why did my thumb hover but never press buy now? Because it wasn't about money. It never had been. It was about boundaries, about pride, about the strange new relationship we were all learning to navigate. She wasn't a child anymore. She was nearly 30 with savings and a career. We didn't want to teach her that we would keep solving every inconvenience forever. We wanted her to carry her own weight. But she wanted us to recognize that some responsibilities, the house, the infrastructure, the weak corners were Wi-Fi. Died still belonged to us. So we stood our ground, all three of us. Stubborn, proud, principled. And the router blinked, indifferent. Sometimes I wondered what outsiders would think. Her coworkers, hearing her apologize for dropped calls, probably imagined two ancient parents hoarding dial-up in the basement. Our friends, when we told the story, shook their heads and laughed. You're buying her a whole vacation, but won't spring for an extender? You're the crazy ones. Her friends no doubt told her, "Your parents are being ridiculous. Just buy it and move on." But inside this house, we knew it wasn't that simple. It wasn't about $79. It was about growing pains, about the uneasy overlap between independence and dependence, about the way love sometimes disguises itself as stubbornness. I still haven't bought the extender. Neither has she. Maybe one day one of us will cave, not because we lost the principle, but because we remembered the bigger picture. Maybe the house will finally give up its secrets, and the signal will strengthen on its own. Ending the war without a victor. Until then, we live with the absurdity. She works in the dining room most days. We bite our tongues when the words "on," "principle" come to mind. And the Wi-Fi keeps flickering, that little green light pulsing like a heartbeat we all pretend not to notice. So are we the assholes? I don't think so. We're just human. Humans who love each other, humans who trip over pride, humans who sometimes fight harder over $79 than over things that actually matter. But here's what I do know, the signal that matters. Most the one between us, the bond built over decades of parenting and forgiving and laughing and cooking dinners 6 nights a week, hasn't dropped. Not once. And as long as that connection holds, the rest is just noise.